I'm about to drop some really crazy knowledge on all of you. Kekkai Sensen is fucking cool. But in all seriousness, you probably don't need me to tell you that. Everything about the show oozes cool, from the characters to the abilities, the music to the animation style, and hell, even the city itself. Everything about Kekkai Sensen screams cool in a way that very few shows or movies can compete with. But what's outstanding about Kekkai Sensen is how well it's written. Like seriously, I would trade 2 OVAs of this show for another season of something like Index in a heartbeat. And that's not a diss on Index, but just a sense of the high esteem I put the Kekkai Sensen franchise. And while the writing prowess probably comes through clearest on the character of Hellsalem's lot, I'm gonna save that for another time and focus today instead on how the show balances the cool characters. Believe it or not, endless cool is overwhelming. Just imagine watching One Punch Man if Saitama had the character of Kamina from Gurren Lagann. It'd be a boring show. Flashy, sure, but it wouldn't be entertaining. Mary Sue's are boring because of this very idea, so it was important for Kekkai Sensen to balance out its cool characters. And for a show that is so cool, that might seem like a bit of a challenge, but instead the show uses the balance to provide depth to the characters. And to highlight this idea, I want to talk about episode 3 from the 2nd season, aka Beyond, because it shows off this balance and characterization pretty well. 4 characters are at the center of the episode: Leo, Zapp, Chain, and Steven. Leo's coolness arc is like a big U, with Chain being the opposite, and Zapp and Steven's arcs are also opposites, with Zapp being a linear progression to being less cool, and Steven being a linear progression to more cool, with some fluctuations here and there for all 4. I made an actual chart graphing out the coolness of each character and how it changes from scene to scene, which you can see here. But the main point is how the characters have these opposite arcs to balance the relative coolness of the cast. The graph, by the way, statistically doesn't mean anything because I have nothing to compare it to, other episodes of this show or other shows. Though the coolness chart TM definitely is going to get applied to other shows in the future, so stay tuned for that. If you can imagine the net coolness of the cast being a 5 on a scale of 0 to 10, this show does its absolute best to stay around there. When one character does something awesome, another character is getting beat up in the street. But the characterization throughout is consistently good. So let's talk about those coolness arcs really fast and the characterization that comes with them. Leo's arc is the one that's U-shaped, where he starts off pretty normal and ends pretty normal, but spends most of the show pretty uncool. This isn't unnatural for Leo, since he's the character that the audience is supposed to relate to the most, and is a good comparison point for how cool his teammates in Libra are. But when he spends most of the episode getting beat up, it's definitely a dent in how we perceive him. Those post-beat up moments, though, are beautiful lenses to understand Leo's character. He doesn't want to use his powers for himself, and he's unwilling to take actions that could, even if highly improbable, kill someone. We also see the Tortoise Knight persona during the fight in the bar, where he doesn't run away even when he knows he won't be able to attack and win. Leo's arc ends when Zapp asks him for help, which he agrees to even though he knows his power won't be of any use, and is dealing with the aftermath of getting beat up. Leo's devotion to his friends and family is both a great character moment and is actually really cool. Let's switch gears to Zapp, who starts off at peak coolness. The image speaks for itself, and we could have a larger discussion about whether this is actually cool or not, but for argument's sake, let's just go with the tacitly accepted societal understanding and how the writers likely wanted this scene to be interpreted. Zapp's arc is a linear drop in coolness, as after his literal manhood is threatened, he gets eaten, howls like a dog, and begs Leo for help, finishing the episode clutching his crotch as his head grinds along the concrete on a moped. Zapp is definitely the comic relief of the episode, with his situation not providing much character development for Zapp himself, though certainly assisting Leo in that regard, but rather reaffirming his position as a badass one moment and a goofy goon the next. Chain's arc is the opposite of Leo's, where she starts off pretty neutral, but spends most of the episode as a badass. And as far as the Chain Sumeragi character is concerned, this is probably my favorite episode of hers that isn't a chained focus one. She starts off being too cool to help Leo as he's getting beat up, then challenges the thugs to a drinking contest, which she absolutely schools him in, funny chain faces aside, and then gets Leo's money back and returns it without even being seen. These moments, while being badass, also show that Chain cares about her teammates. And I think it's fair to assume from her not helping Leo initially and simply slipping his wallet back to him, that it implies that Chain is both protective of Leo and also wants him to grow and be self-reliant, though I'm definitely basing this off of some other moments in other episodes. Chain's final moment, though, of her puking into a toilet, brings her back down to normal at the end of the episode, after being completely unparalleled in her coolness for most of the episode, with the exception of Steven, who has the pinnacle badass moment of the episode, but slowly builds up to it, as he spends the opening of the episode getting cold read by Veded, his helper. This is rare for Steven, he even says as much, and normalizes the suave ice wielder in a way that we haven't really seen up to this point in the show. And that's not particularly uncool, but he does have a seemingly uncool moment when he trips as his guests are arriving. Though in the aftermath, the context is him throwing a party, so certainly he's still pretty cool. Especially when he's about to pop champagne, which The Great Gatsby has informed us is the single coolest thing one can do at a party. The pinnacle moment though is when his guests turn on him to capture him, and it's revealed that even his trip was actually cool, since it secretly sent ice needles into his guests, and in that moment freezes the lot of them. Ice powers are undoubtedly the coolest, pun intended, and Steven walking around the room explaining why he suspected them, like small changes in the center of gravity, makes this scene unbelievably awesome. Even the post-party scene where he's talking about Veded and chiding himself for not keeping his guard up can't take away from how amazing the previous scene was. And him thanking Veded is another humanizing moment that shows how deeply Steven appreciates those around him. And that's it. You can think of this as a precursor to a more full explanation of Kekkai Sensen and how cool things are. Specifically, I want to talk about Hellsalem's lot at some point in the future, but I thought looking at how the writers balance coolness was an important thing to talk about. And also, I love Kekkai Sensen. So thank you for watching. If you want to see more analysis, you can click on the playlist to the left, and subscribe to the right if you want to see more content from us in the future. Also, I've been thinking about talking about some of the currently airing shows of this season, so leave a comment down below if there's one in particular that you want me to tackle.